Well, the one thing that we continually have is our high tides. It's been in place now. We're going on now a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit, maybe 3 weeks now. But it's been our tides have been pretty spectacular as far as how much water is in our system right now. So that has given us more than ample time to locate and find where fish are hanging out, where they're holding. You know, when you have the super low tides for a long time, and then all of a sudden you get them where you can concentrate, so you know where they're at then. But then when you get that first little big juice that comes in there and busts a lot of more water in here and pushes fish everywhere, so it takes a little time to locate and see kind of what they're doing, where they're hanging out. So that's the one thing that we've been able to do is we've been locating, finding these fish now over the past several weeks, or a couple of weeks anyway. One of the areas that's been very good down here in Mesquite has been on the Madre shoreline. That whole back shoreline, all the way from from Bray Cove to the point to the mouth of Cedar, even down into Cedar some, on the little flats on either side of it. But we've primarily been focusing right there on that Madre shoreline and just working the big grass flats that's out there, working the edges, working the sand pockets, working all that stuff all the way just back and forth up and down that shoreline, just kind of seeing what your wind is doing and where it sets you up best. So when we look at those areas and we really can focus on that, then we can really go to town and work on those things. And like I say, the amount of water that we've had in our system here, so there's been plenty of fish that we've had opportunities at catching that's been hanging on that particular shoreline in a large area up and down that shoreline. So it's been pretty good for us, especially this past week. So we're on the backside of the new moon. It's been really good. The days leading up to and just the few days after that new moon phase was very productive for us all week long. Had some very good quality days on the water, catching fish, locating on a number of different baits. We've caught them on top water. Of course, we've caught them a ton of them on plastic. We've caught them on double D's, and it's been very good. So there was a few baits that kind of stood out a little bit better than others, and the one particular color in any variety that you threw, didn't matter what the bait maker was. If you threw the white ice or the bone diamond, it was the most productive this past week, especially in the style of water. Because even with the amount of winds that we've had too, it could dirty up the main part of the bay systems and even push into it. Because we had a little bit of northwest wind the last few days, or northeast winds the last few days, and it's kind of finally starting to shift back around to the east to the southeast. But when you've had to contend with those for a couple of days, it changes everything. So the fishing changed for us for a few days, kind of configure and see what they wanted as far as color what kind of profile they wanted, how they want it presented to them. So we had to refigure all that stuff for those couple of days, or a few days, if you will. Again, white ice and bone diamond were the two flavors that were the most productive for us. And then, of course, we had our standards: Twisted Tea, Big Papa, Mud Minnow, Firecracker, Supernatural, Watermelon Red, all those flavors. And didn't matter if you threw it in a down south version, if you threw it in a knock and tail version, if you threw it in the mirror lures, if you had the paddle tails that Marker 54 has, it didn't matter. Those flavors were all very good across the board in all the makers. So the primary flavor that or the primary size that we threw it from a 6-inch down to a 4-inch, which was very good for us. And then when we got our bite that would be just a little bit slower, then we would throw that burner shad or the 2 3/4 to 3-inch size baits, whether it be a paddle tail or the Little Johns or any of those things. But those particular baits across the board, as size and profile wise, did very well for us this past week. And again, now what we got to contend with and what we got to look for is now we're in the transition days. These next 8 to 10 days are going to be kind of all over the place. Weather patterns are going to change somewhat. We still got a lot of water in our system. And once that water, at some point, once that big bull tide stops, that water's going to drop out of here. So it'll change things again. So you always have to kind of be ebb and flow with what's going on, and just be prepared for different situations. Because you can be sitting here and see a 1.1, 1.2, we even seen 1.5 a couple of days. So that means there's a tremendous amount of water in there, and it opens up a whole bunch of areas for you to be able to fish. But you're going to come up there and get to look at a tide report early in the morning on one of these days, and it's going to be a 0.4, and the next thing you know, it's like, oh, have to eliminate some water pretty quick. When you got those higher tides like that, it pretty much opens up water. You can fish just about anywhere you want, but it'll give you a little bit of false sense of security. So always be very aware of the area that you're fishing and what's going on in the particular area you're fishing, whether it's up here in Mesquite or down in the upper Laguna, or if it's over in Copano. It doesn't matter. You have to be aware of your tide system, what's going on with it, and where water places is. So again, lots of bait in the system, tremendous amount of bait. So we're really focusing on in and around that food source, still hovering over grass, hard packed sand. Lots of these areas are kind of opening up. Fish are showing up. Again, shale is starting to hold a lot of trout. And so if you got those areas that you're aware of and you know that that's kind of the areas that you really want to focus on, then you'll locate you some fish in there. So again, the majors and minors were very key for us in this past week, and that will always be a continual thing. Always, always, always include that major or minor into your fishing day to continue to make your fishing to be good. Blackjack Point. This is an interesting little stretch of water from the cut that comes out of St. Charles all the way down to your turn that goes in behind Dunham Flat. So what you have here, there's a tremendous amount of beautiful grass, potholes, hard packed. It's like walking on concrete over here when you walk this particular shoreline. The only thing is you have to really be smart about the day that you choose to fish this area, because with a southeast breeze, you've got wind that's going to blow right into it, and especially if it's a strong southeast breeze, it's virtually impossible to fish because it's super dirty. But one of the great things is if you can time it right and you have the right wind, it's going to either blow up it toward the Copano Bridge, or it's going to blow back down toward the ICW. So in this past week, we had great winds, really good strong winds, but we had a couple of days where it set this shoreline up perfectly. So you could fish it perfect and just fish parallel with the shoreline and work down all these potholes and work all this grass. One thing you have to be aware of, it gets burned a lot. Airboat guys, other guys in shallow running boats, they'll burn that just to keep an easy path so they don't get beat up out in deeper water. So that's really the only thing you have to worry about. But there's some really great areas up and down it, tremendous amount of grass, bait. Like I say, you've got gutters that are in there, you've got pockets, you got a little bit deeper areas, you got shallow areas, and the little grass that's in there, man. So we were throwing burner shads, we were throwing original size down south there in here. Another one that was really good for us was the Big Smooth that down south it came out with. So that's a terrific bait. If you haven't tried those, you need to really put some in your box or get you a bag of them and try them out. But they did really well for us this past week, especially on that particular shoreline. Those trout were hanging in and around the grass. Like I say, a lot of these fish have got eggs in them. And that's the thing, is they're pushing up on grass, and that's why you really need to target that kind of stuff, is those fish are going to be in and around that, because when they're getting ready, if you turn them over, you catch one, if you catch a smaller trout, or even if you catch a slot trout, whatever, turn them over and look at their belly. And one of the ways that you can tell the difference between the males and the females is the males will grunt, females will not. And then, of course, the females, you can look at their bellies and stuff, you'll see a lot of rash, redness that's on there, and that means that they're getting those beds ready to get ready those eggs. Another little key indicator for you, just a small little tidbit, is if you start catching a lot of male trout in and around some of these types of areas, that's a great indicator that there's a female that's in and around there, and it may be a really good female, big, that she's getting ready to lay those eggs. So that's just one of those things that you really want to keep an eye out for and pay attention to. But we worked this shoreline, and we would fish this. We'd fish it up to the shell. We'd get back up on these areas here, and you get back here in the little mouth. You got a bunch of shell that's around this. And again, I've already told you, shell reefs and shell bars and stuff are starting to hold fish in these particular areas. So we get to those and we work in those, and we found some quality fish that are in there. Some mid slots, 18s, 19s, a couple that were in the low 20s, and then of course we caught several in that 14 to 16 range. But nonetheless, it was a very productive week for us in this particular area, and we fished those on a couple of different days. Working down it, working the wind shoreline. If you had a weak enough southeast breeze, east breeze is really good for it. A west breeze, west, northwest really sets up for it as well. But if you get a day that's coming out of the southeast, but it's not blowing 20, and you can get on it maybe with a 5 to 10 mile an hour wind, then you can really work that, and it can be very productive for you. And there's other opportunities there. You've got little back lake mouths that kind of dump out into it in a couple of different spots that you can find and locate some flounder, redfish, or maybe even some better quality fish that are trout that are in those areas. But it sets up good, and you can come back around here to the point. You can work all this down here. Very weightable, very good. Of course, with a southeast breeze, if you turn the corner, then you can start working this shoreline here. And this shoreline here, not as hard packed as what the front is on Blackjack, but it's still wadeable and you can fish it. You got good grass, it's in those, plenty of bait, and there's plenty of opportunities in there. Again, make sure that you're working those majors and minors. Same baits that I mentioned earlier. Same things apply to these particular areas. Just take your time with it and have fun with it. Down here, Port Bay, around the little grass island that's right here, and this little slough that runs back up in here. You got the houses right there on that little corner, and you got this whole little wading flat that's in here. And again, with the amount of water that we've had in here, this area right here is kind of lit up pretty well for us. And you come back around the point, come back around here down this west shoreline and work all that. So all that has opened up really well for us, all the way down to the point toward the 188 sand ramp, back to where the kayak launch is, all the way back up into here. So southeast breeze, you're going to want to start it back down this way and just kind of take your time, work that big old flat that's out there, because a lot of it's opened up. You got more grass that's in this area now, so it's really starting to come back and starting to be really good and very productive area. It's one of those that you just kind of going to go work and go see what's going on, see what kind of fish that you're catching. Are you catching quality fish, catching undersized fish? Are you getting opportunities at big fish, if there's reds hanging up there? So we've had a kind of an eclection of different types of species in there. We've caught redfish on it, we've caught trout, we've caught black drum, we've pulled out a few flounder off this, a stray sheephead, any of that kind of stuff we have caught off this particular shoreline, all the way back up there to the point, all the way back up in here toward Port Bay, and just working different areas of it just based on what our wind is doing on that any particular given day. You know, predominantly we got southeast breeze moving forward as we finish up May, as we're moving through May pretty quickly. We got June dead ahead. July's not far away. So these types of area right now in the springtime have been pretty productive for us. You just got to get out there and you just got to really work. You know, we've thrown topwater in there and had decent amount of success. We've thrown supermodels like the Big Smooth, then in the down south version of it in different flavors, white ice, bone diamond, twisted tea, big papa, all these different flavors, watermelon red, a lot of different things in there. If you have a particular color that you like, that you have a lot of confidence in, throw it in there, but get after it, and know that you'll have opportunities. Double D has been another one, again, with the amount of water that we've had. Some of these areas have got a nice little edge to them that you can feel that drop as you're walking off of it. And the only way that you're going to know it is get your feet on the ground and find it. And once you do, then you can kind of stay on that and you'll start locating fish in one of those kind of types of areas. So, you know, burner shad for us been, again, the main two colors in burner shad, well, we can add white ice to that, but the mud minnow, firecracker, supernatural, white ice, they've all been very good for us. Color X has been good in the burner shad as well. The knock and tail is your three main ones: greenback, heavy metal, and Rogue. Rogue has been very good, another one as well, in a lot of different flavors of water. It's worked. It's pretty productive for us in this past week. 16th ounce jig heads, same thing. Been throwing. That's what I continue to throw all summer long. We're not working thing any deeper than waist deep, so everything is good with 16 ounce jig heads, and helps you control that descent of that bait and keeps you out of that grass, so you're not constantly hung up in it if you're not able to control that. But that 16th ounce jig head will do that for you. It'll assist. The Marker 54, the new paddle tail, and their jerk shrimp has been pretty good for us. You know, we've got a lot of white shrimp that's migrating right now, so another great bait to throw in there if you like to use shrimp. If you've been dabbling with or been throwing live bait for a long time and you're wanting to try to dabble into the artificial side, get you some of those white Marker 54 shrimp and throw those. You can put them under popping cork and you can free line and work them the same way. It's got great action on them and you get good results with those. So something to consider. But again, we've just been working these areas like that. And of course, we've been throwing the mirror lures as well. The Little Johns and provokers have been good for us as well. So like I say, a large variety of baits, a lot of different colors, and it's all pretty much predicated on watercolor and stain of it, and where we're at in our moon phase. Again, what I mentioned in the first video, we're in our transition days now, so you're going to get a lot of different things to come at you. So make sure that you have a variation of baits and sizes and profiles that you can throw, because some of your days are going to be difficult. They're going to be a little tough grind. We had a couple, because as we transitioned away from that full or that new moon, we were dabbling on the edge of those transition days, and some of those days where that weight just had to grind, we would catch our fish, but it would take it a little bit, so you had to work. So it's always fun if it happens fast, but more times than not, you're going to have to work and locate your fish, but it can be consistent for you if you pay attention to the little signs and little details. But again, as moving forward and through May, make sure you pay attention to your weather systems and what's coming, what your opportunities will be. Majors and minors, always, always, always have fun on the water and be safe beyond that.